Sarah Jenkins dropped to her knees in the frozen mud outside Monroe Ranch, her children clinging to her threadbare coat. She had 17 cents left, no food, no shelter, and winter was 3 days away from killing them all. The man standing on the porch hadn't spoken to a woman in 6 years. Every desperate widow, every hopeful bride in Silver Creek County had tried. Every single one had failed. But Sarah didn't come with sweet words or tearful pleas. She came with a proposition that would shake him to his core. Friends settle in for a story that proves sometimes salvation comes not with romance, but with raw survival. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these frontier tales travel. And stay until the end, because this story will break your heart before it heals it. The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside Thornton's General Store, and Sarah Jenkins felt her stomach clench with something between hope and terror. This was it. The end of the line, the last stop her 17 cents could buy. Mama. Jacob's voice was steady, but she heard the fear underneath. Is this the place? This is it. She didn't move yet. Couldn't. Through the grimy window she could see the town of Silver Creek stretching out like a broken promise. 24 buildings huddled against the vast Montana sky. A saloon already leaking piano music. A church with a crooked steeple. And beyond it all, mountains that looked like they could swallow a person whole. It's small, Lily whispered, pressing closer to Sarah's side. Smaller than the other towns? Small can be good, sweetheart. Small means people notice when you need help. But Sarah knew that wasn't always true. Small also meant people noticed when you were desperate, when you were running out of options, when you were one bad decision away from watching your children starve. The driver opened the door. End of the line, ma'am. Silver Creek. Sarah gathered Lily into her arms, feeling how light the girl had become. 6 years old and light as a bird. That wasn't right. Children shouldn't be that light. Come on, Jacob. Her son grabbed their 2 carpet bags, everything they owned in the world, and jumped down first, then turned to help her. At 11, he was trying so hard to be the man of the family. It broke her heart and made her proud in equal measure. The cold hit her like a fist. October in Montana was nothing like October in Boston. This cold had teeth. This cold meant business. Mrs. Jenkins. Sarah turned to find a plump woman in a flour-dusted apron hurrying toward her from the general store. Martha Thornton. They'd exchanged letters. Mrs. Thornton, thank you for meeting us. Lord have mercy, look at you 3. Frozen half to death already. Martha's eyes swept over them with the practiced assessment of a woman who'd seen hard times. When did you last eat real food, I mean? Not whatever scraps you've been managing. Sarah's pride wanted to lie. Her children's hollow cheeks wouldn't let her. Yesterday morning, some bread we saved from... That's enough. Martha took Lily right out of Sarah's arms, and Sarah was too exhausted to protest. Tom, come help with these bags. We've got hungry children here. A thin man emerged from the store, took one look at Jacob, struggling with the carpet bags, and relieved him of both without a word. Inside, Martha ordered. All of you. There's stew on the stove, and I won't hear any arguments. The warmth of the general store hit Sarah like a wave, and she had to grab the counter to keep from swaying. When had she last been truly warm? St. Louis, maybe, before they ran out of money for decent lodging. Sit. Martha pointed to a table near the potbelly stove. Eat, then we'll talk. The stew was simple beef, potatoes, carrots, but Sarah had to force herself not to cry at the first bite. Lily ate like she'd forgotten food existed. Jacob tried to pace himself, but his hands were shaking. Martha watched them with eyes that missed nothing. How long since your husband passed? 2 years. Sarah kept her voice steady. She'd had practice. Consumption. He was a bank clerk in Boston. Left me with 2 children and more debts than I knew existed. And you've been traveling since, working our way west. Seamstress in Philadelphia, laundress in Pittsburgh, cook in St. Louis. Sarah set down her spoon. I've done everything honest a woman can do, Mrs. Thornton. Everything. And it's not enough. So you came here. I came here because it was as far as my money would take me, and because you mentioned in your letter that there might be work. Martha exchanged a glance with her husband that Sarah couldn't read. There's work, Martha said slowly, but the work I mentioned, it's not simple. I'm not afraid of hard work. It's not the work I'm worried about. Martha leaned forward, lowering her voice. You asked about positions available, housekeeping, cooking, that sort of thing, and there is one. But the man who needs it, he's not easy. I've worked for difficult people before. Not like Caleb Monroe, you haven't. The name meant nothing to Sarah, but she saw Tom Thornton wince slightly. Who is Caleb Monroe? Martha sat back, folding her arms. Caleb Monroe owns the biggest ranch in Silver Creek Valley. 600 acres, good water rights, successful operation. He's been running it alone for 10 years. Alone. Completely alone. No wife, no family, no help beyond what he hires temporarily for roundup. The man does everything himself. Cooking, cleaning, mending, doctoring cattle, everything. Then why would he need a housekeeper? He doesn't think he does. That's the problem. Martha's voice dropped even lower. But winter's coming, and last winter nearly killed him. Blizzard caught him out checking fences. Took him 3 days to get home with frostbitten hands. He couldn't work properly for 2 months. If he nearly died, surely he'd want help. You'd think so. But Caleb Monroe has turned down every woman in this county. Every single one. Sally Brennan brought him pies for 3 years straight. He ate the pies and sent her home. Widow Patterson offered to cook and clean for just room and board. He said he'd rather starve. Mary Sullivan, prettiest girl in the territory, practically threw herself at him. He told her he had no use for pretty. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach that had nothing to do with the October wind. Why? Nobody knows for certain. There was a woman once years back, Margaret something. Story is she was supposed to marry him, then ran off with some rich man heading to San Francisco. Left Caleb with a half-built house and a heart frozen solid. So he's bitter. He's more than bitter. He's built walls so high and thick that nothing gets through. Not kindness, not charm, not desperation. Women have tried everything. He just turns them all away. Sarah looked at her children. Lily was scraping the last of the stew from her bowl with her finger. Jacob was eyeing the breadbasket like he wanted to ask for more, but didn't dare. What does he look like? Sarah asked. This Caleb Monroe. Why does that matter? Because if I'm going to propose a business arrangement to a man who hates women, I'd like to know who I'm dealing with. Martha's eyebrows rose. Business arrangement. I'm not looking for a husband, Mrs. Thornton. I buried a good one. I'm looking for survival, for my children. Sarah's voice hardened. If this Caleb Monroe needs help and I need shelter, then we have something to offer each other. Romance doesn't enter into it. Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, a short, surprised sound. Well, that's different. Will you tell me where to find him? You can't just walk up to Monroe Ranch. It's 7 miles out of town, and you've got 2 children and no horse. Then where can I find him in town? Tom Thornton spoke for the first time. He comes in every week for supplies. Been doing it for years. Always on Thursdays. Today's Thursday. It is. Tom glanced toward the window. Should be here within the hour if he keeps to his pattern. Always comes just before noon. Loads up his wagon, doesn't talk to anybody more than necessary, and heads back before dark. Sarah stood up. Where are you going? Martha asked. To wait. In this cold, with those children. I'll leave them here if you'll allow it. What I have to say to Mr. Monroe isn't for young ears. Martha studied her for a long moment. What exactly are you planning to say? Whatever I have to. The general store porch gave Sarah a clear view of the main road. She wrapped her coat tighter, the same coat she'd worn for 3 years, patched so many times it was more thread than original fabric, and waited. The cold seeped through the soles of her boots, through her thin stockings, through every layer she owned. But she'd felt colder. She'd felt hungrier. She'd felt more desperate. That was a lie. She'd never felt more desperate than this. 17 cents. That's what she had left. 17 cents and 2 children who trusted her to keep them alive. 2 children who'd already lost their father, their home, their security. 2 children who'd followed her across 1,000 miles of broken promises because she'd told them it would be better. It had to be better. She would make it better, or she would die trying. The sound of wagon wheels on frozen ground made her straighten. She'd been standing so still for so long that her joints ached when she moved. A wagon appeared around the bend in the road. Single horse, sturdy mare, practical rig. And driving it a man who looked exactly like someone who'd spent 10 years building walls around himself. He was bigger than she'd expected. Broad shoulders, strong hands, the kind of frame that came from hard physical labor. His face was weathered, but not old, early 30s maybe. Dark hair showed beneath a battered hat, and his eyes. Even from this distance, she could see how cold those eyes were, how closed, how absolutely certain they wanted nothing to do with anyone. He pulled up outside the general store and climbed down from the wagon without a glance in her direction, tied the horse to the post, started toward the door. Sarah stepped into his path. He stopped, didn't step back, didn't move around her. Just stopped and waited like she was an obstacle that would remove itself if he was patient enough. Mr. Monroe? It wasn't a question. She'd learned to read people years ago. This man carried his name like a weight. Ma'am. His voice was rough from disuse. You're in my way. I know. I intend to be. Something flickered in those cold eyes. Surprise, maybe, or irritation. I don't know you. No, you don't. Sarah kept her voice steady. My name is Sarah Jenkins. I arrived on the noon stage with my 2 children. We have no money, no food, and nowhere to go. Thornton's run a boarding house. Try there. He moved to step around her. Sarah moved with him. The boarding house costs money, Mr. Monroe. I just told you I don't have any. Then the church. Reverend Harwell helps folks down on their luck. Reverend Harwell helps folks for a few days. A week if they're lucky. I have 2 children, Mr. Monroe. I need more than a week. His jaw tightened. Look, ma'am. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. Whatever you're offering, I'm not interested. I've got supplies to get and a long ride home, so if you'll excuse me. I'm not offering anything. He paused again. What? I'm not offering. I'm proposing. That's the same thing. No, it isn't. Sarah took a breath. This was it. This was everything. An offer can be refused. A proposal demands a response. For the first time, Caleb Monroe really looked at her. Not through her, not past her, at her. Say what you came to say then. You need help on your ranch. Winter's coming and last year nearly killed you. His expression didn't change, but she saw his hands tense. Mrs. Thornton talks too much. Mrs. Thornton cares about the people in this valley, including you, whether you want her to or not. Sarah pressed on before he could interrupt. I need shelter for my children, a safe place to spend the winter, food, warmth, a roof that doesn't leak. Lots of people need those things. But not everyone can give you what you need in return. She stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his gray-blue eyes. I can cook, clean, mend, preserve food, tend animals, doctor minor injuries, manage a household through the hardest conditions. I raised 2 children through poverty that would break most people, and I did it without ever begging, stealing, or compromising my integrity. Impressive speech. You practice it on the stage. I practiced it every day of my life, Mr. Monroe. Every day I've had to convince someone that I was worth keeping around. that my children were worth feeding, that we deserved a chance. His eyes flickered to the store window where Jacob and Lily were visible, watching with anxious faces. "Those your kids?" "Yes." "How old?" "Jacob's 11. Lily's 6. "Young. Young enough to need a stable home. Old enough to help with chores." Sarah's voice hardened. "Old enough to understand that life isn't fair and survival isn't pretty, but we do what we have to do anyway." Caleb Monroe was silent for a long moment. The wind picked up driving ice crystals against their faces. Sarah didn't flinch. She'd felt worse. "You said you're proposing," he said finally. "Propose what exactly?" "A business arrangement. Nothing more, nothing less." Sarah spoke clearly, letting every word carry weight. "I keep your house, cook your meals, mend your clothes. My children and I live in your home through the winter. In exchange, you provide room and board, food, shelter, warmth. When spring comes, we reassess. If it's not working, we leave. No harm done." "No harm done," he repeated flatly. "You think it's that simple?" "I think it's exactly that simple if we both want it to be." "And if I say no?" Sarah felt the cold wrap around her heart. "Then I walk back into that store and I figure out something else. Because that's what I do, Mr. Monroe. I figure things out. I've been figuring things out for 2 years, ever since I buried my husband and discovered that the life I thought I had was built on debts and lies." She took another step closer, close enough that a proper lady would have stepped back. She wasn't a proper lady anymore. She was a mother with 17 cents and 2 hungry children. "But before you say no, let me ask you something, and I'd appreciate an honest answer." His eyes narrowed. "What?" Sarah held his gaze. Let him see the steel in her. "Do you want a wife, or do you just want another winter alone?" The question hit him like she'd slapped him. She saw it in the way his whole body tensed, in the way his breath caught, in the way those cold eyes suddenly weren't cold at all, but burning with something that might have been anger, or might have been fear. "That's none of your business." "Maybe not, but it's the question you need to answer." Sarah didn't back down. "I'm not asking to be your wife, Mr. Monroe. I'm not asking for love or romance or promises. I'm asking for a roof over my children's heads and a chance to earn our keep. That's all." "If that's all, then the question you asked?" "The question I asked is the same one you've been avoiding for 10 years. Sarah's voice softened but didn't waver. "Every woman in this county has tried to give you what they thought you wanted. Charm, beauty, home cooking, whatever they imagined would thaw your frozen heart. And you turned them all down because none of them asked the right question. Which is, what do you actually need?" The silence stretched between them. Around them, Silver Creek went on with its business. Men walking to the saloon, women shopping at the store, children chasing each other through the muddy street. None of them paying attention to the standoff happening right in front of them. "You don't know me," Caleb said finally. His voice was rougher now. "You don't know what I need." "You're right. I don't know you. But I know loneliness. I know what it looks like when it's been carved into a person so deep they've forgotten what anything else feels like." Sarah paused. "I also know the difference between choosing to be alone and being afraid of anything else." "I'm not afraid." "Then say no." She stepped back, giving him room. "Say no and walk past me. Get your supplies and go home to your empty house and spend another winter talking to yourself because there's no one else to talk to. That's your choice, Mr. Monroe. It's always been your choice." He didn't move. "But if you're even a little bit tired of that life, if some part of you remembers what it felt like to have voices in your house and people who counted on you and a reason to come home that wasn't just chores and silence, then maybe we should talk." The wind howled around them. Snow began to fall, not heavy yet, but steady. The first real snow of the season. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met," Caleb said slowly, "or the craziest. Probably both. Desperation does that to a person. This isn't desperation. This is He searched for the word. Calculation. You planned this. Researched me. Practiced what you'd say. Yes. The honesty seemed to surprise him. You're not going to pretend it was spontaneous. Why would I have 2 children to feed and 17 cents to my name. Spontaneous is a luxury I can't afford. Sarah lifted her chin. I'm not ashamed of being prepared, Mr. Monroe. I'm not ashamed of doing whatever it takes to keep my children alive. If that makes me calculating, then I'll be calculating. If it makes me manipulative, then I'll be manipulative. But I won't apologize for fighting to survive. I didn't ask you to apologize. No, you're trying to find a reason to say no. Something wrong with me that justifies walking away. She shook her head. You won't find it. I'm not hiding anything. I'm exactly what I appear to be, a widow with 2 children and no options. The question isn't whether I'm worthy of your help. The question is whether you're capable of giving it. Something shifted in his face. She couldn't read it. Anger, respect, recognition, she didn't know. 1 hour, he said abruptly. What? There's an old claim about a mile out of town. Jameson's place before he went bust. Creek with cottonwood trees. You know it. Sarah shook her head. Tom Thornton will tell you how to get there. 1 hour. We'll talk properly without half the town listening. Sarah glanced around. For the first time, she noticed the faces in windows. The people who'd stopped on the boardwalk. The attention they'd attracted. Will you be there? I said I would. People say a lot of things. His jaw tightened. I don't. If I say I'll be somewhere, I'll be there. 1 hour. Don't be late. He walked past her into the store. The door swung shut between them. Sarah stood in the falling snow, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her temples. She'd done it. She'd gotten him to listen, to agree to talk. But she hadn't won anything yet. Not really. 1 hour of conversation wasn't shelter. It wasn't safety. It wasn't food for her children, or warmth against the coming winter. It was just a chance. She'd built her whole life on chances. Chances that failed. Chances that broke her heart. Chances that left her poorer and more desperate than before. But she kept taking them. Because the alternative was giving up, and Sarah Jenkins had forgotten how to give up somewhere between burying her husband and selling her mother's wedding ring. She turned and walked back into the store. Martha Thornton was waiting, her face a mixture of shock and something that might have been admiration. I heard, Martha said. Well, part of it. Enough. He's agreed to talk. In 1 hour. At some place called Jameson's Claim. And you're going to go? Sarah looked at her children. Lily was pressed against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Jacob stood with his arms crossed, trying to look protective and only looking young. Yes, she said. I'm going. Alone. It's the only way he'll talk honestly, without worrying about what the children might hear or the town might gossip about. Martha shook her head slowly. You're either going to save that man or destroy him. Maybe both. I'm just trying to save my children. That's what I mean. The hour passed slowly and too quickly at once. Sarah washed her face, tidied her hair as best she could, brushed the road dust from her coat. Small things, pointless things, but they gave her hands something to do while her mind raced. Mama! Jacob caught her arm as she was preparing to leave. What if he says no? Then we figure out something else. What else is there? It was a fair question. An honest question. The kind of question she'd been trying not to ask herself. I don't know yet, but we'll find it. She cupped his face in her hands. We've always found something, haven't we? Yes, ma'am. Then trust me one more time. Can you do that? He nodded, but his eyes were too old for 11. Too knowing. Take care of your sister. I'll be back before dark. Tom Thornton lent her his wagon with directions to the Jameson claim. Sarah drove carefully, unused to handling reins, all too aware of how much she was risking on a conversation with a man who'd spent a decade pushing the world away. The cottonwood trees appeared like ghosts through the falling snow. A creek partially frozen wound between them, and standing beside a worn fence post, his horse tied nearby, was Caleb Monroe. He'd gotten there first. She wasn't sure what that meant. Sarah pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down, her legs stiff from the cold. The snow was falling harder now, accumulating on her shoulders, catching in her hair. "You came," she said. "I said I would." "You did." They stood facing each other, two strangers with nothing in common except proximity and need. "Your husband," Caleb said without preamble. "How did he die?" "Consumption." It took him slowly, then all at once. He was sick for a year before we knew how serious it was. Another 6 months before he couldn't work anymore. Then 3 months of watching him fade until there was nothing left to fade. That's hard. Yes. And after I discovered he'd borrowed money to pay his medical bills. Money we didn't have. Money that came due the week after his funeral. Sarah's voice didn't waver. She'd told this story too many times for it to hurt the way it once had. The creditors took everything. The house, the furniture, the silver, the linens. Everything except the clothes on our backs and my mother's wedding ring. "You still have the ring?" "I sold it." The words still tasted bitter. "Last week, in Helena, to buy stage tickets to Silver Creek." He was quiet for a moment. That must have been difficult. "It was metal and stone. My children needed food." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Sarah met his eyes. "It's what's true. Sentiment doesn't keep bodies warm, Mr. Monroe. It doesn't fill empty stomachs. I learned that the hard way. Most people don't survive that kind of learning. Most people have other options." Another silence. The snow continued to fall. "Why here?" Caleb asked. "Why Montana? Why Silver Creek?" "Because it was far. Because no one knew me. Because I couldn't stay where I was, and I didn't know where else to go." Sarah pulled her coat tighter. "I've spent 2 years running Mr. Monroe. Running from debt collectors and bad memories and the constant reminder of everything I lost. I'm tired of running." "So you want to stop here?" "I want to stop. Whether it's here or somewhere else depends on the next hour." He turned away, looking out at the frozen landscape. The mountains in the distance. The endless white. "You asked me a question earlier," he said, "about wanting a wife versus wanting another winter alone." "I remember." It wasn't a fair question. Most questions aren't. He almost smiled. Almost. "The truth is, I don't want either. I don't want a wife who'll leave when something better comes along, and I don't want another winter of talking to myself because there's no one else." He turned back to face her. "I've built something here, Mrs. Jenkins. Something that works. Something I control. And I don't trust anything I can't control. Including people. Especially people." His voice hardened. "I trusted a woman once. Loved her even. I was building that house for us, planning a future, working toward something, and she walked away without a word. Just gone. Like nothing I'd done mattered. Like I didn't matter." "Margaret." His eyes flashed. "Mrs. Thornton really does talk too much. She talks because she cares. The people in this town care about you, whether you want them to or not." Sarah took a step closer. "But I'm not Margaret. I'm not here because you're handsome, or because you own land, or because I think I can change you. I'm here because I'm desperate and you're available, and I'm hoping we can help each other survive." "That's romantic." "I told you I wasn't offering romance. I'm offering work, service in exchange for shelter. Nothing more complicated than that." "It's always more complicated than that. Only if we let it be." He studied her face like he was reading a map, looking for landmarks, trying to figure out where he was. "Your children," he said finally. "The boy, Jacob." "Yes." "He looks at you like you're holding the world together with your bare hands." I am. And the girl, Lily. She's 6. She doesn't understand most of what's happening, just that we keep moving and nothing is ever permanent. That's hard on a child. It's hard on everyone. But children are resilient. They adapt. Sarah's voice softened. All they really need is to feel safe, feel wanted, know that someone will protect them no matter what. I can give them the first 2, but I can't protect them from a Montana winter with 17 cents and no shelter. 17 cents. That's what I have left. Not enough for another stage ticket. Not enough for a week at the boarding house. Just enough to make sure I can't run anymore even if I wanted to. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. The understanding of someone who'd been trapped by circumstances beyond their control. The house has 3 bedrooms, he said slowly. I only use 1. The other 2 have been empty since I built them. Sarah felt her heart begin to pound. Mr. Monroe, I'm not agreeing to anything yet. He held up a hand. I'm just telling you what exists. 3 bedrooms, a kitchen with a stove that heats most of the house, a root cellar full of preserves and vegetables, a smokehouse with enough meat to last until spring. That sounds like a home. It sounds like a building with food in it. A home requires... He stopped. It requires things I don't have. What things? People, noise, complications. He almost spat the last word. The kind of entanglements that make a man vulnerable, that give the world leverage against him. You think having people in your house makes you weak? I think it gives others power over me that I don't want to give. Sarah took another step toward him, close enough now to see the lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples, the tension in his jaw. Mr. Monroe, Caleb. She used his first name deliberately. I've had power over men before, not by choice, but because that's how the world works when you're a woman alone. I've had to smile when I wanted to scream, say yes when I meant no, pretend things were fine when they were falling apart, and I'm tired of it. All I want now is an honest arrangement with an honest man. You give me shelter, I give you service. We keep our hands to ourselves and our expectations clear. No power games, no manipulation, just 2 people helping each other survive. You make it sound simple. Because it is simple. We're the ones who complicate things with fear and distrust and memories of people who hurt us. Sarah softened her voice. I'm not Margaret. I'm not going to disappear. I have nowhere to disappear to. That's not exactly reassuring. It's honest. I'd rather give you honest than reassuring. The snow was falling heavier now, accumulating on their shoulders, turning the world white and quiet. 1 month, Caleb said. Sarah's breath caught. 1 month trial. You work. I provide room and board. At the end of the month we decide together whether to continue through winter. He paused. If it's not working, I'll pay your stage fare to wherever you want to go. That's generous. That's practical. If you leave, I don't want you stranded in Silver Creek causing talk and trouble. And if it is working, then we negotiate terms for the winter. Spring comes, we reassess again. His eyes held hers. No promises, Mrs. Jenkins. No expectations beyond what we explicitly agree to. And no... He stopped. No what? No getting attached. His voice was hard. Not you to me, not your children to the ranch, not anyone to anything. This is a business arrangement. It stays a business arrangement. Understood? Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that he couldn't control what people felt, that her children would get attached whether he liked it or not, that she might already be getting attached to the idea of him. But she swallowed all of it. Understood. Good. He moved toward his horse. I'll pick you up tomorrow at dawn. Have your things ready. Tomorrow? Weather's turning. Need to get you settled before the real snow hits. He paused. Tell Thornton to put your boarding tonight on my account. 1 night won't break me. Before Sarah could respond, he was on his horse and riding away, leaving her standing in the falling snow, with a chance she wasn't sure she deserved. But she'd take it. She'd take it and make it work and keep her children safe. And if that meant living with a man who'd built walls around his heart, well, she'd broken through walls before. The ride back to town felt shorter than the ride out. Or maybe she was just lighter. Hope did that to a person, made everything feel more bearable, even when the outcome was still uncertain. Martha Thornton was waiting on the porch of the general store, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders and worry written across her face. "Well, 1-month trial," Sarah said. "He's coming for us at dawn." Martha's eyes widened. He agreed. Caleb Monroe agreed to take someone into his home. He agreed to try. That man hasn't let anyone past his property line in 6 years, and you got him to agree after one conversation. Martha shook her head slowly. "What did you say to him?" Sarah climbed down from the wagon, her legs unsteady from cold and relief. "I asked him what he needed instead of telling him what I could give. And that worked. It worked well enough." Sarah looked toward the store where her children's faces pressed against the window. "It's just a chance, Mrs. Thornton. 1 month. A lot can go wrong in 1 month. A lot can go right, too." Sarah wanted to believe that. Wanted to let herself hope that this time finally she'd found a place that could become home. But she'd hoped before. Believed before. Trusted before. And every time the world had found a way to take it all away. So she pushed the hope down, locked it somewhere safe where it couldn't hurt her, and walked into the store to tell her children that tomorrow they were going to a ranch. That tomorrow maybe their running would stop. That tomorrow. She couldn't let herself think beyond tomorrow. Not yet. Not until she knew if Caleb Monroe would keep his word. But as she held her children that night, listening to them breathe in the warmth of the boarding house room, Sarah allowed herself one small moment of something that felt almost like peace. Tomorrow she'd find out if it was real. Tomorrow everything would change. For better or worse, tomorrow was coming. And Sarah Jenkins would be ready. Dawn came gray and cold, the sky heavy with clouds that promised more snow. Sarah had been awake for hours, checking and rechecking their meager belongings, making sure the children were ready. "Mama!" Jacob stood by the window, his breath fogging the glass. "There's a wagon coming." Sarah's stomach clenched. He'd come. Part of her had expected him to change his mind overnight, to send word that he'd reconsidered, that the arrangement was off. But there he was, driving his wagon down the main street of Silver Creek, his face set in that same closed expression she remembered from yesterday. "Get your things," she told the children. "Both of you. We're leaving." Lily clutched her doll tighter. "Is the man nice, Mama?" "He's fair. That's better than nice sometimes." They met him outside the boarding house. Caleb Monroe didn't climb down from the wagon, just sat there holding the reins, watching them approach, with eyes that gave nothing away. "Mrs. Jenkins." "Mr. Monroe." "You're ready?" "I said I would be." Something flickered across his face. Approval, maybe. Or just surprise that she'd kept her word. "Put your bags in the back. Boy can ride there too. You and the girl up front." Jacob bristled at being called boy, but Sarah shot him a look that silenced any protest. They loaded their carpet bags, pitifully light, pitifully few, and climbed aboard. The wagon started moving before Sarah was fully settled. Caleb Monroe, it seemed, didn't believe in wasting time. 7 miles, he said without looking at her. "Take about an hour in this weather, longer if the snow picks up." "I understand. House has been empty a long time. I've kept it clean enough, but it's not what you're probably used to." "Mr. Monroe, I've slept in barns and abandoned sheds and once in a church basement with rats. Whatever your house is, it's better than that." He glanced at her, then something unreadable in his eyes. Rats. St. Louis. The church was supposed to be a refuge for families in need. Turned out the need was greater than the refuge. Sarah kept her voice matter of fact. "We left after 2 nights. Jacob killed 3 rats with a board he found. He was 10. From the back of the wagon, Jacob's voice carried forward. 4 rats, Mama. You always forget the one behind the altar. Caleb's hands tightened on the reins, but he said nothing. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the creak of the wagon and the soft whisper of falling snow. Lily had fallen asleep against Sarah's shoulder, exhausted from a night of anxious excitement. The boy, Caleb said finally. Jacob, he any good with work? He's willing. That counts for more than skill at his age. Can he follow instructions? Better than most adults I've known. Caleb was quiet for another moment. I could use help with the stock. Feeding, watering, mucking stalls. Nothing too heavy, but it needs doing twice a day. He'd be grateful for the chance to be useful. It's not about gratitude, it's about work getting done. I understand. Do you? He turned to look at her fully. This isn't charity, Mrs. Jenkins. I'm not taking you in because I feel sorry for you. I'm taking you in because I need help and you're offering it. The moment that arrangement stops working, the moment you become more trouble than you're worth. We leave. You've made that clear. Have I? Because women have a way of hearing what they want to hear instead of what's being said. Sarah felt her temper flare, but she controlled it. Mr. Monroe, I've spent 2 years having men explain to me what women do and don't understand. Landlords who thought I couldn't comprehend that rent was due. Employers who assumed I needed simple words and simpler tasks. Creditors who believed I was too delicate to face hard truths. She kept her voice level. I buried my husband, lost my home, and kept my children alive across 1,000 miles of hostile territory. I understand things just fine. The silence that followed was different. Charged. Fair enough, Caleb said finally. I won't explain things twice. Good, because I won't need you to. They crested a hill, and Sarah saw the ranch for the first time. Her breath caught despite herself. It was larger than she'd expected. A main house solid and well-built with smoke rising from the chimney. A barn that could hold 12 horses. Outbuildings scattered across the property, smokehouse, chicken coop, what looked like a workshop. And beyond it, all acres of land stretching toward the mountains. This is yours? 600 acres. Built it from nothing. It's substantial. It's work. Every acre of it, every building, every fence post. Work that never ends. I'm not afraid of work. So you keep saying. He guided the wagon toward the house. Let's see if it's true. The house was cold when they entered the fire, having burned low during Caleb's absence. Sarah immediately moved to tend it, but he stopped her. I'll handle the fire. You get settled. First room on the left is yours and the girls'. Second room is for the boy. Mine's at the end of the hall. That door stays closed. Understood. Kitchen's through there. Root cellar's under the floor. There's a hatch by the back door. Privy's out back, but there's a chamber pot in each room for nights. Pump works most of the time, but if it freezes, there's a barrel of water by the stove. Sarah absorbed the information, already cataloging what she saw. The house was clean, as he'd said, but it was also empty. Not just of people of life. No curtains on the windows. No rugs on the floors. No pictures on the walls. Just bare functionality, like a tool rather than a home. The other rooms, she said carefully. The ones you said were empty. Were they always empty? His jaw tightened. They were supposed to be for... It doesn't matter. They're empty. Have been since I built the place. Since Margaret left. He didn't say it, but Sarah heard it anyway. Mr. Monroe... Caleb. The word came out rough, almost unwilling. If you're going to be living under my roof, you might as well use my name. Caleb, then. And I'm Sarah. He nodded once sharply, then turned toward the door. I've got stock to tend. Boy Jacob, you come with me. Time to learn what you're in for. Jacob scrambled to follow his face, eager, despite his attempts to look serious. Sarah watched them go, then turned to survey her new domain. Mama. Lily had woken up, her eyes wide as she took in the unfamiliar space. "Are we going to live here?" "For a while, sweetheart. Would you like to see our room?" The room was spare but adequate. A bed large enough for both of them, a chest of drawers, a small table by the window. The window itself faced east, catching what little light filtered through the clouds. "It's big," Lily whispered. "Bigger than the other places." "It is. And warm. Can we stay?" "We're going to try very hard to stay, Lily. But you need to understand, we have to earn our place here. This isn't a gift. It's a trade." Lily nodded solemnly. "I can help. I can be quiet and good and not cause trouble." Sarah's heart broke a little at how easily her daughter promised to disappear. "You don't have to be quiet, sweetheart. You just have to be helpful. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Quiet means hiding. Helpful means being part of things." Sarah knelt down to meet her daughter's eyes. "I want you to be part of things here. Can you do that?" "I'll try." That's all anyone can do. Sarah spent the next hour exploring the house, taking inventory of what existed and what was needed. The kitchen was well stocked with basics: flour, salt, sugar, dried beans. The root cellar was impressive, filled with preserved vegetables and fruits from a garden that must have taken considerable effort to maintain alone. She found dishes in the cupboard, pots and pans, basic utensils. Everything functional, nothing decorative. A house built by a man who cared about survival and nothing else. When Caleb and Jacob returned from the barn, Sarah had a simple meal ready. Soup made from preserved vegetables, bread she'd found in the pantry, coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. "You didn't have to cook?" Caleb said, stamping snow from his boots. "I'm here to work. Cooking is work." He grunted, which she was beginning to understand was his version of acknowledgement, and sat down at the table. Jacob followed, his face flushed from cold, but his eyes bright. "Mama, you should see the horses. There's a bay mare that Mr. Monroe that Caleb says I can learn to ride. And the cattle. There must be 50 head, maybe more. And the barn has these—" "Eat first," Sarah said. "Talk after." Jacob fell silent, but his excitement was palpable. Even Lily caught it, peppering her brother with whispered questions while they ate. Caleb watched them with an expression Sarah couldn't read. Not hostile, exactly. More like a man observing something he didn't quite understand. "The boy did well," he said finally. "Followed instructions. Didn't complain." "I told you he was willing." "Willing and able aren't the same thing. He's able too." Caleb paused. "He'll need warmer clothes. What he's got won't last a week out here." "I know. I was hoping—" "There's a trunk in the storage room. Old clothes from— just old clothes. Might be something that fits him. Check after supper." Old clothes from Margaret's time, probably. Things he'd bought for the children they were supposed to have. Sarah felt a pang of something: sympathy. Recognition. Both. "Thank you. It's practical. Can't have him freezing when there's work to be done." Everything was practical with this man. Every kindness wrapped in utility, every gesture justified by need, as if admitting to simple generosity would break something inside him. "Caleb?" He looked up. "Thank you anyway." Something shifted in his eyes, just for a moment. Then the walls came back up. "Storm's coming tonight. Real one this time. Tomorrow we'll need to secure the stock, check the fences, make sure the house is ready. You know how to handle a rope." "I can learn." "Good, because tomorrow everyone works." The storm hit after midnight, howling around the house like something alive and angry. Sarah lay awake listening to it. Lily pressed warm against her side and thought about all the storms she'd weathered. None quite like this. The fury of a Montana blizzard made everything else seem gentle by comparison. But the house held. The walls didn't shake. The roof didn't leak. Whatever else Caleb Monroe might be, he was a man who built things to last. She finally slept and dreamed of nothing. Morning came white and wild. The world transformed into an ocean of snow. Sarah had breakfast ready before dawn, coffee, oatmeal, bacon from the smokehouse. Caleb appeared in the kitchen, looking like he'd already been awake for hours. "Stock's going to need extra feed in this cold. Water troughs might be frozen. Boy ready." He's getting dressed. "Girl can help you in the house. Storm like this will need more wood brought in. Can she carry?" "Small loads, yes." "Good. Idle hands in a blizzard lead to trouble." He ate quickly, mechanically, like a man refueling rather than enjoying a meal. Sarah watched him and wondered when he'd last tasted anything. Really tasted it, instead of just consuming what his body needed. "The oatmeal," she said. "Is it all right?" He paused mid-bite. "What?" "The oatmeal. I wasn't sure how you take it. Some men like it thick, some like it thin. I can adjust for tomorrow if—" "It's fine." "But is it good?" "There's a difference between fine and good." He stared at her like she'd started speaking a foreign language. "Does it matter?" "To me it does. I'm here to do a job. I'd like to do it well." Something complicated moved across his face. "It's good. Better than what I make. Smoother. I added a little butter while it was cooking. Helps with the texture." "Oh." He took another bite, and Sarah could swear he tasted it this time. Really tasted it. Thank you." It was the most sincere thing he'd said since they arrived. The day was brutal. Jacob worked beside Caleb in the barn, learning to break ice on water troughs to distribute feed efficiently to check animals for signs of cold stress. Sarah watched from the kitchen window when she could, her heart in her throat, every time the wind gusted hard enough to make the boy stagger. But he kept going. Every time he stumbled, he got back up. Every time the cold seemed too much, he pushed through. Her son, she thought with fierce pride. Her William's son. Lily helped carry wood small armloads that she treated like precious cargo. She also discovered the chickens in the small coop attached to the barn and came back to the house full of breathless reports. "There's 6 of them, Mama 5 brown ones and 1 white one. Caleb says the white one is mean, but she lays the best eggs. Can I name them?" "He said I could if I wanted." "He said that—" "Well, he said, I don't care what you call them as long as you collect the eggs. That means yes, right?" Sarah hid a smile. "I think it means yes." Dinner that night was more elaborate stew from the preserved meat biscuits Sarah made from scratch, a simple dessert of stewed apples. Caleb said nothing when he sat down, but she noticed he took second helpings of everything. "Storm should blow itself out by tomorrow," he said as they finished eating. "Then we'll have 3, maybe 4 days of clear weather before the next one hits." "How do you know?" "Been watching this weather for 10 years. It has patterns, rhythms." He pushed back from the table. "We'll use those clear days to shore up the fence line. Boy can help. You'll need to preserve the meat I'll be butchering." "I know how to preserve meat." "Know how to do it in volume. We're not talking about a rabbit or 2. We're talking about enough beef to last 4 people through winter." 4 people. He'd included them in his count without seeming to notice. "I'll manage." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but closer than she'd seen. "Tomorrow," he said and headed for his room. The pattern of their days began to take shape. Morning started before dawn. Caleb and Jacob to the stock. Sarah to the kitchen. Lily to the chickens she'd claimed as her personal responsibility. Breakfast together, then the day's work. Dinner as the sun set. Evenings by the fire, quiet, but not uncomfortable. Caleb didn't talk much, but Sarah began to read his silences. There was the tense silence when something was wrong. A sick animal, a broken fence, a worry he wouldn't share. There was the comfortable silence of a man working through problems in his head. And there was the watchful silence of someone observing, cataloging, trying to understand. He watched them all the time. Not suspiciously exactly. More like a man studying something he'd never encountered before. "You're staring again," Sarah said one evening 2 weeks into their arrangement. Caleb blinked. What? You've been staring at Jacob for the past 10 minutes. He looked away embarrassed. Just thinking. About the way he is with the horses. He's got good instincts. Better than most men twice his age. He loves them. Animals, I mean. Always has, even in the city. Cities don't have animals like this. Cities have enough to catch a boy's attention. Carriage horses, street dogs, the occasional cat. Jacob used to spend hours at the livery stable near our apartment. The owner let him help sometimes in exchange for lessons about horses. That where he learned to ride. Learned is a strong word. He sat on horses, walked them around a paddock. It was enough to give him the basics. Caleb was quiet for a moment. I could teach him more, if he wants. He'd want that very much. It's practical, Caleb said quickly. He needs to know how to handle horses if he's going to be useful around here. Of course. Practical. He shot her a look that suggested he knew she was humoring him, but couldn't figure out how to object. Lily, meanwhile, had claimed her own corner of the ranch. The chickens had names now. Henrietta Beatrice Martha, Adelaide Constance, and the mean white one she'd dubbed Empress Victoria, and she'd appointed herself their official caretaker. Caleb, she announced one morning. Henrietta is sick. Caleb looked up from his coffee. What? Henrietta. She's not eating like the others, and her feathers are all puffed up. Chickens puff up in the cold. It's normal. Not like this. This is different puffing. Lily's face was serious. I think she needs medicine. Caleb stared at the 6-year-old lecturing him about chicken health and seemed utterly at a loss. I'll check on her, he said finally. Now. After breakfast. But what if she gets sicker while we're eating? Sarah intervened. Lily let Caleb finish his coffee. Henrietta will be fine for another 20 minutes. Lily subsided, but her eyes kept darting to the window, watching for any sign of chicken distress. Caleb checked on Henrietta after breakfast, Lily trailing behind him like a determined shadow. When they came back, he was carrying a small bundle of feathers. It's not Henrietta, he said. It's Adelaide, and she's not sick. She's brooding. Brooding? Wants to sit on eggs. We'll need to separate her from the others for a while. Lily's face transformed with joy. She's going to have babies. If the eggs are fertile, maybe. No guarantees. Can I help take care of her? Please. Caleb looked at Sarah, clearly hoping for rescue. She offered none. I suppose, he said. But you do exactly what I tell you. Brooding hens are temperamental. I will. I promise. She ran off to tell her brother, and Caleb turned to Sarah with an expression that was almost plaintive. How does she do that? Do what? Make me agree to things I never intended to agree to. It's a gift, Sarah said. Some women are born with it. Were you? No. I had to learn mine the hard way. He held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then looked away. I need to check the fences, he said. Jacob, you're with me. The first month passed faster than Sarah expected. The work was hard, harder than anything she'd done before, but it had rhythm and purpose. Every task mattered. Every effort contributed to survival. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the house began to change. It started with small things. Sarah found curtains in that trunk of old things never used still in their wrapping and hung them in the kitchen. The light changed. The room felt warmer. Lily's chicken drawings appeared on the wall near her bed. Jacob carved a small horse from a piece of wood Caleb gave him, and it found a home on the mantel. Sarah baked bread 3 times a week now, and the smell of it had become synonymous with home. Caleb noticed. She could tell by the way his eyes tracked these changes, cataloging them, but not commenting. Sometimes she caught him looking at the curtains like he was trying to remember something from before. The curtains, he said one evening, breaking a long silence. Where did you find them? The trunk. In the storage room. I forgot those were there. They're good quality. Shame to let them go to waste. He was quiet for a moment. Margaret picked them out, before. Said they'd make the place feel like home. Sarah waited, sensing there was more. She left before I could hang them. I put them away and forgot. Do you want me to take them down? No. The word came quickly. No, they look right there, how they were supposed to look. It was the most he'd ever said about Margaret about the before. Sarah filed it away, another piece of the puzzle that was Caleb Monroe. The month's almost up, she said carefully. We should talk about what comes next. His face closed. Yes, we should. Have we been more trouble than we're worth? The question hung in the air. Sarah held her breath, waiting. No, Caleb said finally. You've been useful. Is that all? He looked at her, and for a moment the walls dropped. Just a moment. You've been more than useful. The house is... It's different now. Better. I didn't expect that. But... No buts. Just... He struggled with words that didn't come naturally. Stay. Through winter. The arrangement works. I'd like to continue it. We'd like that too. Good. He stood abruptly. Good. Then it settled. He headed for his room, pausing at the door. Sarah. Yes. The bread you make, it's good. Not just fine. Good. He disappeared before she could respond. Sarah sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by curtains Margaret had chosen and a home Caleb had built for someone else, and felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, of making it to tomorrow. Something softer. Something dangerous. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just an arrangement. Maybe it was the beginning of something more. But even as the thought formed, she pushed it away. Caleb Monroe had made his terms clear. Business. Arrangement. No expectations beyond what they'd explicitly agreed to. She would honor those terms, even if honoring them was getting harder every day. The next morning brought a new crisis. Jacob burst into the kitchen just after dawn, his face pale. The bay mare. Something's wrong. She's down and won't get up. Caleb was already moving, grabbing his coat. Show me. Sarah followed Lily at her heels despite instructions to stay inside. They found the mare in her stall, lying on her side, breathing hard. Colic, Caleb said grimly. Bad one. Will she die? Jacob's voice cracked. Not if I can help it. Caleb was already kneeling beside the animal, his hands gentle on her distended belly. Sarah, I need warm water. Lots of it. Jacob, help me get her up. We have to keep her moving. The next 6 hours were a blur of desperate effort. Walking the mare in circles when she'd rather lie down and die. Dosing her with medicine Caleb mixed from supplies in his workshop. Watching, waiting, praying. Sarah brought food they didn't eat, coffee that went cold, blankets when the temperature dropped. Jacob never left the mare's side, talking to her constantly in a low, steady voice. That's it, girl. Keep walking. You can do it. Just a little more. Caleb watched the boy with something that might have been pride. He's got a gift, he murmured to Sarah during a brief rest. The way he is with her. Can't teach that. He loves her already. Dangerous thing loving animals. They don't always survive. Dangerous thing loving anything. Doesn't stop people from doing it. He looked at her, then really looked, and for a moment something raw showed in his eyes. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. The mare survived. By nightfall she was standing on her own. Eating a little, the crisis passed. Jacob collapsed in the hay beside her, exhausted but triumphant. We did it, he breathed. She's going to be okay. You did it, Caleb said. I just told you what to do. You did the work. Jacob's face glowed brighter than any lantern. Later, after the children were in bed. Caleb found Sarah in the kitchen, nursing a cup of cold coffee. "He saved that horse," Caleb said. "I could have done it alone, but it would have been harder. Maybe too hard." He needed to help, needed to feel useful. "He's more than useful. He's—" Caleb stopped searching for words. "He's the kind of person you want beside you when things go wrong." "Like his father," Sarah said softly. "William was like that too, steady in a crisis, the kind of man who held things together." "You miss him." "Every day. But missing him doesn't help my children, doesn't keep them fed or warm or safe." She set down her cup. "So I do what needs doing, and I miss him when there's time." "Is there ever time?" "Not yet. Maybe someday." Caleb sat down across from her, something he rarely did outside of meals. "The thing about Margaret," he said slowly, like the words were being pulled from deep underground. "It wasn't just that she left. It was that I never saw it coming. I thought we were building something together. Thought she wanted what I wanted. She didn't. She wanted something easier. Something that didn't involve winters like this, work like this. She wanted the idea of the West, not the reality of it." He paused. "I couldn't give her the idea, only the reality." "Reality isn't nothing." "It wasn't enough for her." "Maybe she wasn't enough for it." He looked up surprised. "Some people aren't built for hard things," Sarah continued. "They break under pressure instead of bending. That's not their fault exactly, but it means they can't stay in places that require strength. And you? Are you built for hard things?" "I've survived 2 years that should have killed us. Crossed 1,000 miles with 2 children and no money. Stood in front of a man who'd turned away every woman in the county and demanded he listen to me." Sarah met his eyes. "Yes, Caleb, I'm built for hard things. I'm built for nothing else." The silence between them was different now, charged with something neither of them was ready to name. "The month ended 3 days ago," Caleb said finally. "I forgot to mention it." "So did I." "Guess that means we're into winter now. No more trial period." "I guess it does." He stood pushing back from the table with his usual abruptness. "Good night, Sarah." "Good night, Caleb." He paused at the door. "The bread," he said. "Tomorrow. Could you make more of it?" "The same kind." "Yes, that kind." He hesitated. "It reminds me of something. Something I'd forgotten I missed." He was gone before she could ask what. But Sarah thought she knew. It reminded him of home. Not the house he'd built, the walls and roof and functional spaces. Home. The thing he'd been waiting for without knowing it. The thing that was slowly, carefully, impossibly taking shape around them all. December came with a vengeance. The snow fell harder now, deeper, turning the world into an endless white that seemed determined to swallow everything. Sarah had thought she understood winter. She'd been wrong. 3 feet overnight, Caleb said, stamping into the kitchen with snow crusted on his shoulders. "More coming. This is going to be a bad one." "How bad?" "Bad enough that we need to bring extra wood in today. Enough for a week, maybe more." Jacob was already reaching for his coat. "I'll help." "You'll do more than help. I need you running the south shed while I handle the barn." "Can you do that?" The trust in the question wasn't lost on Jacob. His face went serious adult in a way that still caught Sarah off guard. "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir. Makes me feel old." "Yes, Caleb." They worked all day, all 4 of them. Even Lily helped, carrying smaller pieces of kindling, stacking them carefully by the kitchen stove. By nightfall, the house was fortified. The animals secured everything that could be done. Done. "Now we wait," Caleb said. The storm hit around midnight. Sarah had heard storms before, but this was something else entirely. The wind didn't just howl, it screamed. The house didn't just creak. It groaned like a living thing in pain. Lily woke crying, terrified by the noise. Sarah held her close, murmuring reassurances she wasn't sure she believed. "Mama, the house is breaking." "No, sweetheart, the house is fighting. Remember what Caleb said, a noisy house in a storm is a strong house." "But it sounds so angry." "It's not angry. It's determined. There's a difference." A knock at her door made Sarah jump. Caleb's voice came through the wood. "Everyone all right in there?" "We're fine. Lily's scared." "Tell her the roof's held through worse than this. Built it myself. Overbuilt it, actually. Could probably handle twice the weight." Sarah relayed the message, and Lily's trembling eased slightly. "He built it strong. Very strong. Because he was going to have a family." The question pierced something in Sarah's chest. "Yes, sweetheart, he was. But then he didn't." "No, then he didn't." Lily was quiet for a moment. "We could be his family now, if he wanted." "It's not that simple, Lily." "Why not?" "Because he's afraid," Sarah thought. "Because I'm afraid. Because families aren't built on business arrangements, no matter how well those arrangements work." "Get some sleep," she said instead. "The storm will pass." But the storm didn't pass. It raged for 2 days, trapping them inside with nothing to do but wait. The forced proximity that had been comfortable before became something else entirely. Charged. Aware. Sarah found herself noticing things she'd tried not to notice. The way Caleb's hands moved when he worked on small repairs, capable and precise. The way his voice softened when he talked to Jacob about horses. The way his eyes followed her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. On the second evening, with the wind still howling outside, Lily asked for a story. "Mama's tired," Sarah said. "Maybe tomorrow." Caleb could tell one. The suggestion made Caleb look up from the harness he was mending. "I don't know any stories." "Everyone knows stories," Lily said, echoing something Sarah had taught her months ago. "Even true ones count." "She won't stop asking until you give in," Jacob said with the wisdom of an older brother. "Trust me." Caleb looked at Sarah, almost pleading. "One story," she said. "It doesn't have to be long." He set down the harness, clearly uncomfortable, but unable to refuse a request from a child who'd learned exactly which expressions made adults surrender. "There was a boy," he said slowly. "A long time ago. He lived on a farm with his parents, and he thought life would always be like that. Safe, simple, certain." Lily snuggled into her blanket, settling in. But then something happened. A sickness came, and it took his parents. Both of them within a week of each other. And suddenly the boy wasn't safe anymore. Wasn't certain of anything. Sarah watched Caleb's face as he spoke. This wasn't a story. This was a confession. "What did he do?" Lily asked. "He survived. He went to live with an uncle who didn't want him, worked harder than any child should have to work, and learned that the only person he could depend on was himself." That's sad. It was. But it taught him something important. "What?" Caleb paused, his eyes distant. "It taught him that people leave, that nothing lasts forever, that if you build walls high enough, nothing can hurt you." "But walls are lonely," Lily said with simple certainty. "Yes." Caleb's voice was rough. "They are. So why not tear them down?" "Because tearing down walls means letting people in, and letting people in means they can leave again, can hurt you again." Lily considered this with a seriousness beyond her years. But what if they don't leave? What if they stay? Caleb looked at her, then at Jacob, then at Sarah. "I don't know. I've never found out." The room was silent except for the wind outside. Sarah felt the weight of everything unspoken pressing against her chest. "I think," Lily said slowly, "that staying is better than walls, even if it's scary." "Maybe you're right," Caleb said quietly. "Maybe you are." He went back to his harness, but something had shifted. Some barrier invisible but present had cracked just a little. Sarah tucked Lily into bed that night with extra blankets and a kiss on her forehead. "Mama." "Yes, sweetheart." "Caleb is like his story. The boy who built walls." "I know. But the boy was wrong. Walls don't keep hurt out. They keep everything out. Good things and bad things." "That's very wise, Lily." "I learned it from you." Lily yawned. "You never built walls, Mama. Even when Papa died. You just kept letting us in." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Go to sleep, sweetheart. I hope Caleb tears his walls down. I like it here. I want to stay." "I know you do." "Do you want to stay?" The question deserved an honest answer, even if that answer scared her. "Yes," Sarah whispered. "I want to stay." The storm broke on the third morning, revealing a world transformed. The snow was higher than Jacob was tall in some places. The barn was half buried. The fence line had disappeared entirely. "We've got work to do," Caleb said, and for the next week they did nothing but dig out, repair, and restore. But something had changed. The walls Caleb had built so carefully were developing cracks. Small things barely noticeable. A hand that lingered when passing the salt. A smile that reached his eyes. A "we" where there used to be "I." "We should check the south fence today," he'd say. "Our supplies are holding well," he'd observe. "This is how we do things here," he'd explain to Jacob. Our, we, here. Words that bound them together, whether he realized it or not. Sarah realized it. She noticed every shift, every softening, every moment when Caleb Monroe forgot to be alone. And she began to hope. Against her better judgment, against every hard lesson life had taught her, she began to hope. Christmas approached without fanfare. Sarah hadn't expected Caleb to acknowledge it, but she wanted to do something for the children. Something to mark the day, to remind them that even in the midst of survival, there was room for joy. "I'd like to make a special dinner," she told Caleb. "For Christmas, if you don't mind." "Why would I mind?" "Some people don't celebrate. I didn't want to assume." He was quiet for a moment. "I haven't celebrated in years. No point when you're alone." "You're not alone this year." The words hung between them heavier than she'd intended. "No," he said finally. "I'm not." Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. Sarah had been up since before dawn preparing the meal she'd been planning for weeks. Roast beef from the smokehouse, potatoes and carrots from the root cellar, fresh bread still warm from the oven, and a cake simple but sweet made with precious sugar she'd been hoarding. The children came down to find small gifts waiting for them. For Jacob, a knife Caleb had been secretly working on the handle carved with his initials. For Lily, a new dress for her doll, Rosie, sewn by Sarah from scraps of fabric. "You did this?" Jacob asked, turning the knife over in his hands. "Made it yourself." "It's practical," Caleb said gruffly. "Every man needs a good knife." "It's more than practical." Jacob's voice was thick. "It's... Thank you. I'll take care of it." Lily was already redressing Rosie, chattering to her doll about the beautiful new gown. "Look, Rosie. It's blue. Like the sky Mama made it special for you." Sarah watched Caleb watching them and saw something break open in his face. Something he'd been holding back for a very long time. "I have something," he said abruptly. "Wait here." He disappeared into his room and returned with a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "It's not new," he said, handing it to Sarah. "It was my mother's. I found it when I was going through that trunk and I thought you might." Sarah unwrapped the cloth to find a small brooch. Silver simple, in the shape of a mountain lily. "Caleb, it's not a... I'm not trying to..." He stopped, clearly struggling. "You gave up your mother's ring, to get here, to give your children a chance. This seemed... fair. It's not about fair." "Then what's it about?" Sarah looked at the brooch, then at the man who'd given it to her. The man who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten the sky existed. The man who was slowly, painfully learning to let light in. "It's about family," she said softly. "It's about belonging to something bigger than yourself." "I wouldn't know much about that." "You're learning." The moment stretched fragile and full of possibility. Then Lily's voice cut through. "Mama, is Caleb part of our family now?" Sarah looked at her daughter, then at Caleb. His face had gone carefully blank, waiting for her answer, waiting to be heard again. "That's up to Caleb," she said carefully. "Family isn't something you can force. It's something people choose." "Have you chosen?" Lily asked him directly. The question was too big for a 6-year-old to ask, too important for anyone to answer lightly. Caleb stood frozen, caught between the walls he'd built and the door that was opening. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I want to, but wanting and choosing are different things." "Then choose," Lily said simply. "Choose us. We're right here." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. "Lily," Sarah said gently, "come help me with dinner." She led her daughter away, giving Caleb space to breathe. But she felt his eyes on her back as she walked, and she knew with a certainty that surprised her that something had shifted. Something that couldn't be unshifted. Dinner was quiet but warm. The food was good, the company better. Afterward, they gathered by the fire, full and content in a way that had nothing to do with food. "Tell us about your parents," Jacob said suddenly to Caleb. "If you want, I'd like to know." Caleb tensed, then deliberately relaxed. "What do you want to know? What were they like before the sickness?" "My father was—" Caleb paused, searching for words he hadn't used in years. "Quiet, like me. But not closed, just peaceful. He could sit for hours watching the land and never get bored." "And your mother?" "She sang, all the time, while she cooked, while she cleaned, while she worked in the garden. Said silence was a waste of good air." "Do you remember any of her songs?" Caleb shook his head. "Just the sound, the feeling of them. Safety, I guess. Knowing someone was there." "Mama sings too," Lily offered. "At night sometimes when she thinks we're asleep." Sarah flushed. "Lily—" "It's nice," Caleb said. "The singing. I've heard it through the walls." "You should have said something. I didn't mean to disturb—" "It's not a disturbance." He met her eyes. It reminds me of something I'd forgotten." "Your mother. Home. What home felt like before I forgot." The fire crackled. Outside, the winter pressed against the windows, but inside, something warm was growing. Something that had nothing to do with flames or blankets. "Caleb," Jacob said, his voice more tentative now. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "The things you're teaching me, the horses, the cattle, the land. Is it because I'm useful or because—" He couldn't finish the question, but Caleb understood. "Both," he said. "You're useful, that's true, but it's not why I teach you." "Then why—" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone should have taught me, and no one did. Because you remind me of who I was before I got hard. Because—" He started again. "Because you deserve to know how to build something, not just survive." Jacob's eyes were bright. "I want to build something. Something like this. Something that matters." "Then you will. I'll help you." "Promise." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Promises were dangerous. Promises could be broken. "Promise," Caleb said. Sarah watched her son's face transform with something she hadn't seen in 2 years. Trust. Real, unguarded trust. The kind he'd lost when his father died and the world fell apart. Caleb Monroe, who claimed to have no use for family, had just given her son something precious. Something she couldn't have given him herself. A father's promise. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah found Caleb on the porch. He stood watching the stars, his breath making clouds in the frozen air. "You'll catch cold," she said. "Needed air. Mind if I join you?" He moved over slightly, making room. They stood in silence watching the endless Montana sky. "Thank you," Sarah said, "for what you said to Jacob. I meant it." "I know. That's why I'm thanking you." More silence. But comfortable now. Familiar. "I wasn't lying earlier," Caleb said. "When I told Lily I don't know if I've chosen. I don't. This is new, unfamiliar. We don't have to define it. Don't we? Seems like things that aren't defined have a way of going wrong. Sometimes they have a way of going right too." He turned to look at her. In the starlight, his face was softer than she'd ever seen it. Younger. More vulnerable. "I'm not good at this, Sarah. At people. At feelings. I've spent 10 years making sure I didn't have to be. I know. But I'm trying. For whatever that's worth. It's worth everything." She reached out and took his hand. Not romantically exactly. More like an anchor. Something to hold on to in the vast uncertainty of what they were becoming. He didn't pull away. "The brooch," she said. "Your mother's. Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Why?" "Because you gave up something that mattered to get here. Because you fought for your children when fighting was all you had left. Because you're the first person in 10 years who asked me what I needed instead of what I wanted." "What do you need, Caleb?" The question was the same one she'd asked that first day, but it meant something different now. Deeper. More dangerous. "I need to stop being alone," he said quietly. "I need to remember how to be part of something." "You are. You have been. From the moment you said yes." "That was business." "Was it?" He looked at their joined hands, then back at her face. "No. Not really. Not even at the beginning." "Then what was it?" "Hope," he said. "The first hope I'd felt in 10 years. That maybe things could be different. That maybe I didn't have to be alone forever." Sarah felt tears threatening, but she held them back. This wasn't a moment for tears. This was a moment for truth. "You're not alone, Caleb. You haven't been alone since we got here. I know. That's what scares me." "Why?" "Because now I have something to lose, something that matters, and losing things that matter." He shook his head. "I don't know if I can survive that again." "So you're going to push us away, to protect yourself?" "No." The word came out fierce, certain. "I'm not strong enough for that anymore. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't." "Then what?" He turned to face her, fully still holding her hand. "Then I keep trying. Keep learning. Keep hoping that this time the thing I build doesn't fall apart. That's all any of us can do." "Is it enough?" Sarah thought about William, about the life she'd had, and lost, about the 1,000 miles she'd traveled to end up here on this porch, holding the hand of a man who was everything her husband hadn't been, and nothing she'd expected. "Yes," she said. "It's enough." The wind picked up, sending a cascade of snow from the roof, but neither of them moved. "We should go inside," Caleb said, "before we freeze." "Probably." Still neither moved. Sarah. "Yes." "I'm glad you came. I'm glad you asked that question. I'm glad I was too tired or too lonely or too something to say no." "So am I." He released her hand slowly, reluctantly. "Good night, Sarah." "Good night, Caleb." She watched him go inside, then stood for a moment longer under the stars. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she barely felt it. Something had changed tonight, something profound and irreversible. They weren't just an arrangement anymore. They weren't just a business deal or a survival strategy. They were becoming something else entirely. And for the first time in 2 years, Sarah Jenkins wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. January brought the coldest weather Sarah had ever experienced. The kind of cold that hurt to breathe, that froze the water in the pump overnight, that made every trip to the barn feel like a battle. But inside the house, something warm was growing. She noticed it in small moments. Caleb's hand brushing hers when he passed the coffee. The way he waited for her opinion before making decisions about the ranch. The sound of his laugh, rare but real, when Lily said something unexpectedly wise. And she noticed it in herself. The way her heart lifted when she heard his boots on the porch. The way she found herself watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. The way home had stopped being a place and started being a person. It terrified her, and thrilled her, and kept her awake at night wondering what it meant. "Mama." Jacob found her in the kitchen one morning, his face troubled. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you and Caleb going to get married?" The question hit her like cold water. "Why do you ask?" "Because you look at him the way you used to look at Papa, and he looks at you like he's scared, but he can't look away." Sarah set down the dish she'd been washing. Her son was too observant for his own good, for any of their goods. "I don't know, Jacob. We haven't talked about it." "Would you want to if he asked?" "It's complicated." "Everything's complicated. That's not an answer." She sighed. When had her 11-year-old become so relentless? "Yes," she admitted. "If he asked, I would want to." Jacob nodded slowly. "Good. Because I think he wants to ask. He just doesn't know how." "What makes you say that?" "Because he asked me yesterday if I would mind having him as a father." Jacob's voice caught. "I told him my father is dead, and nothing's going to change that. But that doesn't mean I can't have someone else. Someone who teaches me things and protects us and makes you smile." Sarah's eyes burned. "What did he say?" "He said he wasn't trying to replace anyone. He said he just wanted to know if there was room. And I told him." Jacob paused. "I told him there was, if he wanted it." "Oh, Jacob. I didn't do wrong, did I?" "Saying that." "No, sweetheart, you didn't do wrong." She pulled him into a hug, this boy who was becoming a man who had carried too much too young and somehow emerged with his heart intact. "He's a good man, Mama. Different from Papa, but good." "I know he is." "Then maybe you should tell him that, before he convinces himself you don't want him." Sarah laughed despite herself. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from watching you." The moment was interrupted by the sound of horses, multiple horses approaching fast. Sarah and Jacob exchanged glances, then moved to the window. 3 riders were coming up the road. Even from this distance, Sarah recognized the lead figure, Henry Bishop, the man Caleb had warned her about, the one who'd been eyeing the ranch's water rights for years. "Jacob, get Caleb, now!" Her son ran without question. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and stepped onto the porch, positioning herself between the approaching riders and the house. "Mrs. Jenkins." Bishop dismounted with a grunt, his expensive coat straining against his belly. "Or should I say Mrs. Monroe? I hear congratulations might be in order." "You heard wrong. It's still Jenkins. For now." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Is Monroe around? We have business to discuss." "What kind of business?" "The kind that doesn't concern women." "Everything that happens on this ranch concerns me, Mr. Bishop. I live here." "Do you?" He looked at the house, the barn, the land beyond. "Seems like a temporary arrangement to me. Woman and her children sheltering through winter. What happens when spring comes?" "That's between me and Mr. Monroe." "Maybe, maybe not." Bishop stepped closer and Sarah held her ground. "See, I've got interests in this valley, interests that depend on water rights and land access. Monroe's been an obstacle for years. Too stubborn to negotiate, too stupid to see the opportunity. Sounds like he knows exactly what you're offering and chooses not to take it. What I'm offering is a fair deal, better than fair. Enough money to set him up somewhere else, somewhere easier. Man doesn't need 600 acres to run a small operation. Maybe he wants 600 acres. And maybe he wants other things now. Bishop's eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Things that might change his priorities. Before Sarah could respond, Caleb appeared around the corner of the house, Jacob at his heels. He moved with a controlled tension that Sarah recognized. Anger held in check. "Bishop, didn't expect to see you out this way." "Monroe, we need to talk." "So talk. Privately." "Anything you have to say you can say in front of Mrs. Jenkins. She's part of this household." Something flickered in Bishop's expression. Calculation. Adjustment. "Fine. I'll make it simple. The railroad's coming. Not next year, not maybe. This spring. They're going to need water for their operations, and your creek is the only reliable source in 20 miles. I'm aware. They'll pay well. Very well. But they'll want guarantees. Long-term access rights, minimum flow commitments. The kind of deal that requires cooperation. Or they'll find other ways to get what they need. Legal ways. Ways that might tie your land up in court for years while they build around you." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Is that a threat?" "It's information. The railroad has lawyers, Monroe. Lots of them. And they have friends in the territorial government. Friends who can make life very difficult for a man who won't cooperate." "I've survived difficult." "Have you?" Bishop's eyes went to Sarah, to Jacob, visible in the doorway to the house that was now so obviously a home. "Difficult for yourself is one thing. Difficult for a family is something else." The word landed like a blow. Family. Bishop was using them as leverage, using Sarah and her children as a weapon against the man who'd taken them in. "Mr. Bishop." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady, despite the rage building in her chest. "I've dealt with men like you before. Men who think they can threaten their way to what they want. Men who use women and children as pawns." "Is that so?" "It is. And every single one of them underestimated me. Every single one regretted it." Bishop laughed, but there was an edge to it. Uncertainty. "I'm not threatening anyone, Mrs. Jenkins. I'm presenting a business proposition." "No, you're trying to scare us into selling something that isn't for sale, and it won't work." "We'll see." He mounted his horse, his men following suit. "Think about it, Monroe. The railroad's coming whether you like it or not. You can profit from it, or you can be crushed by it. Your choice." They rode off, leaving dust and tension in their wake. Caleb didn't move until they disappeared over the hill. Then he turned to Sarah, his face tight with emotion she couldn't quite read. "You shouldn't have confronted him." "Someone had to. He's dangerous. More dangerous than you know." "I'm not afraid of him." "Maybe you should be." Caleb ran a hand through his hair. "Bishop doesn't make threats he can't back up. If he says the railroad has lawyers, they have lawyers. If he says they have government friends, they do. So, what do we do?" "I don't know. I've been fighting this battle alone for years. Never had—" He stopped. "Never had what?" "Never had anyone else to worry about. Never had anything he could use against me." The implication hit her hard. They weren't just a household anymore. They were a vulnerability, a pressure point. "We could leave," she said quietly. "Take away his leverage." "No." The word came out fierce, immediate. "No, you're not leaving." "Caleb, I spent 10 years building walls to keep from caring about anyone. 10 years making sure nothing mattered enough to hurt me. And then you showed up with your 2 children, and your 17 cents, and your questions I couldn't answer, and you tore those walls down without even trying." He stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "I'm not letting Bishop take that away. I'm not letting anyone take that away. You're staying and we're fighting, and that's the end of it." "Fighting how?" "I don't know yet. But we'll figure it out. Together." The word echoed between them. Together. Not an arrangement anymore. Not a business deal. Something else. Something neither of them had expected. Together. Sarah agreed. Over the next week, Caleb made trips to town, coming back with information pieced together from conversations and careful questions. Bishop had been buying up land all winter, positioning himself for the railroad's arrival. He already had 3 ranchers in his pocket, their water rights signed over, in exchange for promises that might never materialize. "He's building an empire," Caleb said one evening. "Wants to control everything between here and the mountains. And you're in his way. The only thing in his way. Everyone else either sold or folded. I'm the last holdout." "Why?" Sarah asked. "What makes your land so important?" "Location. My creek feeds everything downstream. Whoever controls it controls the whole valley's water supply. Bishop knows that. The railroad knows that. I've known it for years." "Then why haven't you sold before us when you had nothing to lose?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Because this land is the only thing my parents left me, not the ranch itself. They died before they could build anything. But the land, the dream of what it could become. I couldn't let that go to someone who just saw dollar signs. And now I have even more reason to fight. This isn't just my dream anymore. It's yours. It's Jacob's. It's Lily's. It's ours." The possessive pronoun sent warmth through Sarah's chest, despite the fear that accompanied it. "What do we need to do?" "First, we need allies. Bishop's been isolating me for years, making sure no one stands with me. Time to change that." The next morning, Caleb rode to Pete Lawson's ranch, the nearest neighbor who hadn't sold to Bishop. He came back looking cautiously hopeful. "Pete's with us. He's been worried about Bishop for months, but didn't think anyone else would stand up to him." One ally, that's a start. It's more than that. Pete knows others who feel the same way. We're meeting tomorrow night at his place. All of us who still have something to lose. The meeting was held in Pete's barn. 6 ranchers gathered around a lantern, their faces grim but determined. Sarah had insisted on coming, and Caleb hadn't argued. "Bishop's got the territorial governor in his pocket," one man said. "Any legal challenge is going to go his way." "Then we don't challenge legally," another replied. "We challenge practically. Make it too expensive for the railroad to go through him instead of around him." "How?" "By being the better option. Offering them what they need without Bishop as middleman." The discussion went on for hours. Strategies proposed and rejected, risks weighed against rewards. Sarah listened occasionally, offering observations that the men seemed surprised to consider. "Mrs. Jenkins is right," Pete said at one point. "We've been thinking about this as a fight against Bishop. But the railroad doesn't care about Bishop. They care about water and efficiency. If we can give them that directly, Bishop becomes irrelevant." "That'll take organization. Unity. Things we haven't managed in years. Then we manage them now, before it's too late." They left the meeting with a plan fragile but real. A coalition of ranchers who would approach the railroad together, offering collective water rights in exchange for fair treatment. "It might work," Caleb said on the ride home. "It has to work," Sarah replied. "There's no other option." Bishop's response came faster than they expected. 3 days later, Sarah woke to the smell of smoke. "Caleb." She ran to the window, her heart pounding. The barn wasn't on fire, thank God. But something was. The hay storage. Flames were licking at the structure, growing by the second. Caleb was already outside shouting orders. Jacob came running from his room, still pulling on his boots. "Get buckets!" Caleb yelled. "Every container you can find. They fought the fire for hours." Sarah hauled water until her arms screamed. Jacob worked beside Caleb, following commands without question. Even Lily helped, fetching and carrying her small face streaked with soot and tears. By the time dawn broke, the fire was out. But the damage was done. Nearly half their winter hay supply was gone. "Bishop." Caleb's voice was flat, dangerous. "You can't prove it," Sarah said. "Don't need to prove it. I know. He stood looking at the charred remains, his fists clenched at his sides. Sarah had never seen him this angry, this raw. He's trying to break us, destroy our supplies, make it impossible to survive the winter, force me to sell. Will it work? No. The word was steel. I'll die before I let him win. Caleb. I mean it. This land, this ranch, this... He gestured at the house, at the children huddled on the porch. This is everything I have. Everything I've ever wanted, even when I told myself I didn't want anything. I won't lose it. Not to Bishop, not to anyone. You won't lose it alone. He turned to look at her. Really look, and something shifted in his expression. Sarah, when this is over, when we've beaten Bishop and secured the ranch and made it through winter, there's something I need to ask you. What? Not now. Not like this, covered in soot with our supplies half destroyed. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. When I ask you, I want it to be right. I want you to know it's not desperation or fear or the heat of the moment. I want you to know it's real. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. I'll wait, however long it takes. It won't be long, I promise. The promise hung between them, more binding than any legal document. But first, they had to survive. Word of the fire spread quickly. By afternoon, neighbors began arriving. Pete Lawson with extra hay from his own stores. The Hendersons with preserved food. Even families from town people who'd heard about the coalition and wanted to help. This is how we beat him, Pete said, unloading supplies from his wagon. Unity, community, everything Bishop doesn't understand. Caleb stood watching the procession of helpers, his expression unreadable. I've spent 10 years pushing people away, he said quietly to Sarah, convincing myself I didn't need anyone. And now I see what I was missing, what I almost lost forever. Sheriff Walter Price arrived that evening looking uncomfortable. Sarah watched him dismount, noting the nervous way he avoided Caleb's eyes. Sheriff? Caleb said flatly. Surprised to see you out this way. Got reports of a fire. Came to investigate. Investigate what? We all know who's responsible. Accusations need evidence, Monroe. You know that. Evidence. Caleb laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want evidence, talk to Bishop's men. Talk to the riders who've been circling my property for weeks. Talk to the man himself about the threats he made right here on my land. Bishop says he was just offering a business deal. Says you turned him down, and now you're looking for someone to blame. And you believe him. Sheriff Price shifted his weight. What I believe doesn't matter. What matters is what I can prove. Convenient. Now hold on. I didn't come here to argue. I came to warn you. Bishop's not going to stop. He wants this land, and he's got the resources to make your life very difficult. So what do you suggest, Sheriff? Roll over, sell out? Let a bully take everything I've built? I'm suggesting you be careful. That's all. Think about what you're risking. Sarah stepped forward before Caleb could respond. Sheriff Price, I've met men like Bishop before. Men who use money and influence to crush anyone who stands in their way. And I've learned something about them. What's that, ma'am? They count on people being afraid. On neighbors turning against each other instead of standing together. On lawmen who find it easier to look the other way. She held his gaze. Is that the kind of lawman you are, Sheriff? The kind who looks the other way? Price's face reddened. I'm the kind who follows the law, Mrs. Jenkins. Nothing more, nothing less. Then follow it. Investigate the fire. Talk to witnesses. Do your job. I'll do what I can. Do more than you can. Do what's right. He left without making any promises, but something in his posture suggested she'd hit a nerve. That was risky, Caleb said after the sheriff had gone. Everything's risky now. Might as well risk in the direction that matters. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah found Caleb sitting alone in the dark kitchen. Can't sleep, she asked. Too much thinking. She sat across from him, the only light coming from the embers in the stove. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. The fire, Bishop, the coalition, the future." He paused. "You. Me. What I'm asking you to risk by staying. What could happen if Bishop decides to escalate?" "I knew the risks when I decided to stay." "Did you?" "Because I'm not sure I did. I told myself I was protecting you, taking you in, giving you shelter. But really I was putting you in danger, making you a target." "Caleb, if something happened to you, to the children, because of me, because of this fight." His voice broke. "I couldn't live with that." Sarah reached across the table and took his hands. "Listen to me. I've spent 2 years running. 2 years trying to find a safe place for my children. And do you know what I've learned? There is no safe place. Not really. Safety isn't a location. It's a decision." "What decision?" "The decision to stand with people who matter, to fight for something worth fighting for, to stop running and start building." She squeezed his hands. "You gave me that chance, Caleb. The chance to stop running. I'm not going to waste it by leaving when things get hard. Even if hard means dangerous. Especially then, because that's when it matters most." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he lifted her hands to his lips and kissed them. Gently, reverently. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But you've got me anyway." A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Lily stood there in her nightgown, Rosie clutched to her chest. "I had a bad dream," she said. Sarah started to rise, but Caleb was faster. He crossed to Lily and knelt down to her level. "What kind of dream?" "The bad man came, the one who wants our home, and he took it all away. The house and the horses and the chickens and—" Her voice wobbled. "And you. He took you away, and we were alone again." "Come here." Caleb lifted her into his arms, something Sarah had never seen him do before. "That's not going to happen. You know why." "Why?" "Because this is our home now. All of ours. And we protect what's ours. That's what families do." "Are we a family?" Caleb looked at Sarah over Lily's head. His eyes held everything he couldn't say, everything he'd been afraid to feel. "Yeah," he said softly. "We're a family." Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. "Good. Because I love you, Caleb. And I don't want to lose you." Sarah watched the man who'd sworn off love freeze at a 6-year-old's simple declaration. Watched him struggle with emotions he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten they existed. Watched him choose finally and completely to let them in. "I love you too, Lily," he said, his voice rough. "I love all of you." His eyes met Sarah's as he said it, and she knew he meant it. All of them. Including her. Especially her. "Now." He shifted Lily in his arms. "Let's get you back to bed. Bad dreams can't reach you when you're safe in your own room, in your own house with your family keeping watch." He carried her upstairs, and Sarah sat alone in the dark kitchen, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness. Tears of something else entirely. Hope. Joy. The overwhelming relief of finally belonging somewhere. Whatever came next, whatever Bishop tried, whatever the winter threw at them, they would face it together. As a family, the weeks that followed the fire tested them in ways Sarah hadn't anticipated. February brought the worst cold, yet temperatures that made the January freeze seem mild by comparison. But inside the house, something had shifted. The walls between them had crumbled completely. Caleb no longer retreated to his room after dinner. He stayed talking with Jacob about horses and land management, listening to Lily's elaborate stories about her chickens, exchanging glances with Sarah that said everything words couldn't. And the coalition grew stronger. 3 more ranchers joined, then 5. Word spread that someone was finally standing up to Henry Bishop, and people who'd been afraid to act alone found courage in numbers. The railroad representatives are coming next week, Pete Lawson reported at their latest meeting. They want to hear our proposal directly. Bishop will try to stop it, Caleb said. Let him try. We've got documentation, water surveys, everything they need to see. We're the better option. It's not about better options with Bishop. It's about control. He can't stand losing. Then he'd better learn. The night before the railroad meeting, Sarah found Caleb in the barn checking on the horses one last time. You should be sleeping, she said. Can't. Too much riding on tomorrow. The coalition is strong. The proposal is solid. Pete said the railroad representatives seemed receptive when he spoke with them in town. That was before Bishop got to them. You don't know that he has. I know Bishop. Caleb ran his hand along the bay mare's neck. He doesn't lose gracefully. If he can't win fair, he'll cheat. If he can't cheat successfully, he'll destroy. Then we'll be ready for whatever he tries. Caleb turned to face her. In the dim lantern light, his face showed every year of struggle, every scar from battles fought alone. Sarah, if something goes wrong tomorrow, it won't. But if it does, I need you to know something. What? He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him despite the cold. I was dead before you came. Walking around working, surviving, but dead inside. I'd convinced myself that was enough. That survival was all there was. That feeling things only led to pain. And now? Now I know I was wrong. About everything. He reached up, touched her face gently. You brought me back to life, Sarah. You and Jacob and Lily. You made this house a home. You made me want things I'd given up on wanting. What things? A family. A future. Someone to grow old with. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You. Caleb. I know I said I'd wait until after. Until things were settled. But I can't wait anymore. I need you to know before tomorrow, before whatever happens, that I love you. That I want to marry you. That I want to spend whatever years I have left making up for the years I wasted being afraid. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. I thought you were going to wait for the right moment. This is the right moment. Every moment with you is the right moment. That might be the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Is that a yes? It's a yes. It's 1,000 yeses. It's every yes I have. He kissed her then. Not the gentle brush of lips that might have been expected, but a kiss that contained 10 years of loneliness and 6 months of growing love and a lifetime of wanting someone to come home to. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow, we fight for our future, our family's future. Together. Always together, from now on. The railroad meeting was held in Silver Creek's town hall, a grand name for a building that was really just a larger-than-average room with wooden benches and a small platform at one end. But today, it felt like the center of the world. The coalition ranchers arrived early, taking seats near the front. Sarah sat with Jacob and Lily, who'd insisted on coming despite Sarah's concerns. This is our fight too, Lily had declared with 6-year-old certainty. We should be there. Henry Bishop arrived with his entourage shortly after lawyers, businessmen, men whose expensive clothes marked them as outsiders in this frontier town. He took a seat on the opposite side of the room, his eyes finding Caleb with undisguised hostility. The railroad representatives were 3 men in matching gray suits. They listened impassively as Pete Lawson presented the coalition's proposal, collective water rights, fair access, guaranteed flow rates. Everything the railroad needed offered directly and efficiently. Then Bishop took the floor. Gentlemen, what you've heard is a fairy tale. A group of small-time ranchers pretending they can offer what they don't have the resources to guarantee. He gestured to maps and documents his lawyers had prepared. I, on the other hand, have already consolidated the water rights for most of this valley. My operation can provide everything you need with none of the complications of dealing with multiple parties. Mr. Bishop's operation was built on coercion and threats, Caleb said, rising to his feet. Ask any rancher in this room how they came to sell their rights. Ask them about midnight fires and poisoned wells and pressure tactics that would shame a back-alley thug. Those are serious accusations, one of the railroad men said. They're serious truths. Bishop's face reddened. Monroe's a bitter man with a grudge. His ranch had a fire last month, and he's been blaming me without a shred of evidence. The evidence is standing in this room. Caleb swept his arm toward the coalition. Every single one of these men has a story about your methods, Bishop. Every single one has been threatened, pressured, or attacked. Stories aren't evidence. Then what about this? Sheriff Walter Price stepped through the back door, his face set with determination that surprised everyone in the room. I've spent the last 3 weeks investigating the fire at Monroe's ranch, the sheriff said, and the fires at 2 other properties before that, and the incidents of cattle poisoning that plagued this valley last year. Bishop went pale. What are you saying? I'm saying I found evidence. Witnesses who were too afraid to talk before but decided to come forward. Payment records from your accounts to men known for doing dirty work. A pattern of criminal activity that goes back years. The room erupted. Bishop's lawyers huddled frantically. The railroad representatives exchanged significant looks. And Caleb stood in the middle of it all, vindicated but not triumphant. Mr. Bishop, the lead railroad representative said, his voice cutting through the chaos. We'll need to postpone any agreements until these matters are resolved. If the allegations prove true, we'll be taking our business to the coalition. This is outrageous. I've invested years in this. You've invested in intimidation and violence, Mr. Bishop. That's not the kind of partner the railroad is looking for. Bishop turned to Caleb, his face twisted with rage. You think you've won. You think this is over. I think you're done, Bishop, one way or another. For a moment, Sarah thought Bishop might attack. His hands were shaking, his whole body coiled with fury. Then he seemed to deflate, age settling over him like a sudden weight. You have no idea what you've destroyed, he said quietly. I was building something that would have lasted. You were destroying things, Caleb replied. That's not the same. Bishop turned and walked out, his entourage following in confused disarray. The door closed behind them with a finality that echoed through the silent room. Then Pete Lawson started clapping. Slowly at first, then faster. Others joined in. The coalition ranchers, the townspeople who'd gathered to watch, even the railroad representatives, offered dignified applause. Mr. Monroe, the lead representative said, extending his hand. I think we have a lot to discuss. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of negotiations, agreements, and new beginnings. The railroad deal was signed, fair terms for all the coalition members. Bishop was arrested on multiple charges, his empire crumbling faster than he'd built it. And on a crisp morning in early March, with the first hints of spring softening the snow, Caleb Monroe married Sarah Jenkins in the small church in Silver Creek. The ceremony was simple. No elaborate decorations, no expensive dress. Just 2 people who'd found each other against all odds, surrounded by the community that had helped them survive. Jacob stood as Caleb's witness, his young face solemn with the weight of the moment. Lily scattered flower petals she'd been saving since fall dried, but still beautiful. Do you, Caleb Monroe, take this woman to be your wife? I do. His voice was steady, certain. A man who'd spent 10 years running from commitment, finally standing still. Do you, Sarah Jenkins, take this man to be your husband? I do. No hesitation, no doubt. Just the simple truth of a choice long since made. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Caleb kissed her, and the church erupted in cheers. Martha Thornton was crying. Pete Lawson was grinning. Even Sheriff Price, standing awkwardly in the back, managed to smile, but it was Jacob who said what everyone was thinking. Finally, he murmured, just loud enough for Sarah to hear. Finally, we're home. The celebration afterward lasted most of the day. Food appeared from every kitchen in Silver Creek. Someone produced a fiddle, and despite the lingering winter cold, people danced in the street. Sarah watched it all from Caleb's side, her hand in his, her heart fuller than she'd thought possible. "Regrets?" he asked. "None. You? Only that I waited so long, that I wasted so many years being afraid." "You weren't wasting them. You were preparing, building something worth protecting, becoming someone worth loving." Pretty words. True words. He pulled her closer, and she leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the permanence that had seemed impossible 6 months ago. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we live. Properly. Together. We raise those children and work that land and grow old, watching everything we've built flourish." "That sounds wonderful. It sounds terrifying, in the best possible way." Lily appeared at their side, tugging at Sarah's new dress. "Mama? Papa, can we go home now? The chickens will be worried." "Papa." The word hit Caleb visibly a blow that left him breathless. "Did she just—" "She's been practicing for weeks," Sarah admitted. "Wanted to surprise you." "Is it okay?" Lily asked, suddenly uncertain. "Jacob said it might be too soon, but I wanted—" Caleb knelt down and pulled her into his arms. "It's perfect. You're perfect. Everything about today is perfect. Even the part where Jacob dropped the ring. Especially that part." Jacob appeared, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I didn't drop it. It slipped. There's a difference." "Come here," Caleb said, extending an arm to include the boy in the embrace. "Both of you. This is what I want to remember. This moment. This family." Sarah watched them, her husband and her children tangled together in an embrace that contained everything she'd ever wanted. Everything she'd traveled 1,000 miles to find. The ride home was quiet, peaceful. The winter landscape stretched around them, still white but softening, the first hints of mud showing through where the sun had been strong. "Spring's coming," Jacob observed. "It is. Will we plant a garden this year, a real one?" "The biggest garden in the valley," Caleb promised. "Vegetables, flowers, whatever your mother wants." "I want all of it," Sarah said. "Everything. Every possibility this land offers." "Then you'll have it." They pulled up to the house as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The house looked different now. Not just a building with food in it, as Caleb had once described. A home. Their home. "I have something for you," Caleb said as they climbed down from the wagon. "Wait here." He disappeared inside while Sarah and the children waited, curious. When he returned, he was carrying a small wooden sign. "Made it last week. Been waiting for the right moment." He handed it to her. The sign read simply, "Monroe Ranch," and beneath it in smaller letters, "STA 1868, Caleb, Sarah, Jacob, and Lily." "Our names," Lily breathed. "We're on the sign. You're part of this place now, all of you. Officially." Jacob ran his fingers over the carved letters. "Can I help you hang it?" "I was hoping you would." They mounted the sign together, father and son, because that's what they were now, regardless of blood, while Sarah and Lily watched from the porch. "It looks right," Sarah said. "It feels right." Caleb stepped back, surveying their work. "Took me 15 years, but it finally feels right." That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah and Caleb sat on the porch together, watching the stars emerge one by one. "I keep thinking about that first day," Sarah said, "standing outside the general store covered in road dust with nothing but 17 cents and desperation. You scared me to death." "I meant to." He laughed. "You asked me the hardest question anyone's ever asked. Do you want a wife or just another winter alone? And now you have an answer." "I have more than an answer. I have everything. More than I ever thought I wanted, more than I believed I deserved." "You deserve all of it." "So do you." He took her hand. "Sarah Monroe. I like the sound of that." "So do I." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from knowing someone so well that words become optional. "What do you think would have happened?" Sarah asked eventually. "If I hadn't come." "I try not to think about it." "Tell me anyway." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "I'd have survived. That's what I do. I survive. But surviving isn't living. It took you to teach me the difference. And now I'm living. Really living for the first time in longer than I can remember. Waking up with purpose. Going to sleep with gratitude. Finding joy in small things because I have someone to share them with. That's all I ever wanted, someone to share things with. Well, you've got that now. 3 someones if you count the children. I count everything, every blessing, every moment, every ordinary day that used to feel impossible." Spring arrived slowly then, all at once. The snow melted. The creek swelled with runoff. The land turned from white to brown, to the first tentative green of new growth, and the Monroe family grew with it. Sarah planted her garden bigger than anything she'd imagined. Jacob worked the ranch alongside Caleb, learning everything about the land that would someday be his to steward. Lily's chickens multiplied Adelaide's eggs, hatching into a brood of fluffy chicks that followed the girl around like devoted subjects. The railroad came as promised, bringing change to Silver Creek. But it was change the valley controlled, negotiated on their terms, benefiting all instead of enriching one. On the first truly warm day of spring, Caleb took Sarah to the spot where they'd had their first real conversation. The creek was higher now, the cottonwoods budding with new leaves. "I thought I was doing you a favor," he said, "taking in a desperate widow and her children out of practical need. And now I know you were the one doing me a favor, saving me from a life I'd convinced myself was enough when it was barely anything at all. We saved each other." "Yeah." He pulled her close. "I suppose we did." In the distance they could hear Jacob calling for Lily, some game or argument or adventure in progress. The sounds of children, the sounds of family, the sounds of home. "I keep waiting to wake up," Sarah admitted. "To discover this was all a dream, that I'm still on that stagecoach, still desperate, still running. It's not a dream, it's just life. Real life, the kind that's messy and hard and worth every struggle. When did you become such a philosopher?" "When I married a woman who asks impossible questions and won't accept easy answers." She laughed and kissed him there by the creek where everything had started. Where a man who'd given up on love had agreed to a business arrangement that was never really about business at all. They walked home together as the sun set, hand in hand toward the ranch that bore their names. Toward the children who called them parents. Toward the life they'd built from desperation and determination and the dangerous, wonderful decision to let someone in. Sarah had come to Montana with 17 cents and 2 hungry children looking for survival. She'd found something so much better. She'd found home. She'd found family. She'd found love in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person, in the most unexpected way. And she'd never let it go. None of them would. Because that's what the Monroes did. They built things. They protected things. They loved fiercely and fought harder and never ever gave up on each other. The sign at the entrance said it all. Monroe Ranch. Caleb, Sarah, Jacob, and Lily. 4 names. 1 family. Forever home.